This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. And in Washington, Eric Seberide, Steve Rowan, Dan Rather, Bill Plant in Chicago, Marvin Kalb in Washington, and Murray Fromson in Iowa City.
Good evening. A number of former government officials, including one-time Supreme Court Justice Arthur Goldberg, have asked for an impartial civilian investigation of American conduct in Vietnam that would focus on alleged atrocities. The group urged President Nixon to appoint an investigation panel composed of retired judges, and Chief Justice Warren was suggested, and leading lawyers and professors. In the war, American jets crossed into Cambodia again today in another attempt to knock out North Vietnamese guns that have been shelling U.S. Special Forces camps. The U.S. spokesman said the raids against that supposedly neutral country were carried out only in self-defense. At the United Nations, Cambodia charged that the Allies have killed more than 300 Cambodians since 1962. The latest weekly casualty report in Vietnam lists 70 American combat deaths, the third lowest toll in 3 years. But that figure, combined with 1,049 wounded, pushed total American casualties in the war past the 300,000 mark. That includes 39,642 killed. South Vietnam reported 313 combat deaths during the week, and enemy losses were put at 2,177. The Allies announced today that they're going to observe 24-hour truces during Christmas and New Year's Day. There was no immediate word from the Communists on whether they'd recognize the stand-downs, though. They usually are the first to proclaim holiday truces, which always have ended up being marred by some fighting. In Paris, Henry Cabot Lodge sat in for the last time as chief U.S. negotiator at the Vietnam peace talks. Again, there was no progress, but Lodge came out of the meeting expressing the conviction that the Allies will someday achieve a just settlement of the war with the Communists. However, Secretary of State Rogers told a NATO meeting in Brussels that the Communists have shown no flexibility in the talks, and he's pessimistic about efforts to negotiate with them.
I remember using Polaroid land cameras on my regular show. That was back in the Stone Age, of course. And to get pictures developed just right, I always had to keep one eye on the studio clock. But with this Model 350, you don't even have to do that anymore. This is one of Polaroid's countdown cameras. And it's so automatic, it calls you when the picture is ready. Electric eye, electronic shutter, and electronic development timer. This camera, you get very tricky with it, too. You can use a portrait lens, close-up lens, even take automatic time exposures. And I think my camera's calling. Now, there's a perfect picture. But then that's what every countdown model does. It tells you when your picture is perfect. And I'm telling you, this job ain't bad.
President Nixon announced today that his rejected Supreme Court nominee, Clement Haynsworth, will continue to serve as Chief Judge of the U.S. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Haynsworth stood at his side for the announcement. Dan Rather reports.
President Nixon had never met Judge Haynsworth personally before today. All of their previous contacts had been by telephone, letter, or through Attorney General John Mitchell. So the president brought Haynsworth to the White House today to soothe the judge's injured pride and to fire another blast at his opponents.
I must say that after the brutally vicious and, in my opinion, unfair attack on his integrity, I would well understand why the judge would retire to private life. A weak man would, a fearful man would. The judge is not a weak man. He's a strong man. I told him of my philosophy, which is that a great philosophy is one that is never without defeat, but it is always without fear. The judge has suffered a defeat, but he's without fear. And a man of his courage, his integrity, is needed on one of the highest courts of this land. And I am very delighted to announce today that the judge will continue to serve as Chief Judge of the Fourth Circuit.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the press, no one likes to lose. I don't. But I never have felt that a setback should be accepted as a final defeat of a man or as a judge. I've had the time to become completely convinced that the judges want me back, the district judges want me back, the bar of the circuit want me. So I am going to stay on. In doing so, I have, of course, had a great encouragement from the support I've received from you, the President. I'm very grateful to you for your trust. Your support has been constant, unflagging. It has been a great source of pride to me, and I'll take that pride with me as long as I live.
President Nixon has said he won't try another Supreme Court nomination until at least late January. Among those whose names are mentioned often in speculation are Tennessee's Federal District Judge William Miller and Virginia's Republican Representative Richard Koff. Dan Rather, CBS News, the White House.
Captain Ernest Medina, commander of the infantry company involved in the alleged My Lai massacre, spent the afternoon at the Pentagon today answering questions put to him by a special investigating board. Medina, who has not been officially charged in the case, met with reporters afterwards, and he was asked about a published statement made by a former member of his company charging that he shot a 4-year-old boy at My Lai.
No, I did not shoot any child in My Lai, and no, I did not order any massacre in My Lai.
Was there a massacre there?
I did not see any massacre in My Lai.
Could you describe what did happen, Captain, please, March 16th last year, what your orders were and what did happen on that day in My Lai?
The task force was ordered to conduct a combat assault on a village which is named My Lai 4, which intelligence reports indicated that the 48th VC Battalion was there in that village. That was the primary reason why my company, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry, conducted the air mobile combat assault on the morning of 16th March, was to do combat with the 48th VC Battalion. The women and children, according to the intelligence reports, would be out of the village and gone to market either in Son Tin or Quang Nai.
That did not prove to be accurate, did it?
I do not know.
Did you see any civilians shot at My Lai?
I did not see any civilians shot at My Lai.
Did you see civilians that have been shot there, the pictures I'm referring to that have been published?
I did see some bodies of women and children that had been killed in My Lai.
How many, sir? Could you estimate how many?
The figure that I had previously turned in after action report was that there were approximately 20 to 28 civilians. I received an order from the Task Force S3 telling me that to make sure that there were no innocent civilians or any women and children being killed. I put this information out over the company command net, and it was given to the platoon leaders over the company command net.
Captain Medina indicated that he and his men were under great stress that day as they entered the village, expecting to meet a Viet Cong force. He described how he himself killed one person.
I turned around. I did not see any weapon. I turned around and I started to walk away. As I turned around, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. The first thing that I thought is, boy, you've had it, you're dead. She did have a weapon or she has a hand grenade. I instinctively, from Army training, turned around and fired 2 shots, and I assumed that I did kill her.
On the advice of his attorney, Captain Medina did not respond to questioning about the lengthy Army investigation, which resulted in the charges that one of his lieutenants, William Calley, killed at least 109 men, women, and children that day. Calley will be questioned tomorrow in the Army's new investigation into why word of that incident at My Lai never reached Washington at the time. Stephen Rowan, CBS News, Washington.
With the legislative year almost over, Congress has completed action on only 5 of the 13 appropriations bills necessary to keep the government in business. Many agencies have been operating since July with only temporary authorization for funds. Today, President Nixon threatened to call Congress back to work the day after Christmas if all the money bills have not cleared by then. And Senate Democratic leader Mansfield agreed with him. Democratic leaders cleared the way today for a vote tomorrow on a 15% boost in Social Security benefits. Finance Committee Chairman Russell Long introduced a rider to the tax bill incorporating features of the Social Security bill now in a House committee. The House may act next week. The White House advisor on nutrition, Dr. Jean Mayer, said today that President Nixon has ordered the food stamp program extended to more than 300 counties that do not now have it. Mayer made the announcement in connection with the White House Conference on Hunger, which ended today. He said the president also plans to give quick action to increasing the amount of food stamps a poor family may receive. In Chicago today, 2 Black Panthers were killed as police raided a Panther stronghold. One of the dead was Fred Hampton, 22-year-old Illinois chairman of the Panthers. Bill Plant reports.
State's Attorney's police arrived at Fred Hampton's West Side apartment, half a block from Panther headquarters, at 4:45 this morning. They had a search warrant authorizing them to look for illegal weapons. The State's Attorney's office says its men were fired upon after identifying themselves at the door, and that Hampton and another man were killed in the 15-minute gun battle which followed. 2 policemen and 4 of the 9 people in the apartment were wounded. Hampton's body was found in bed. Panther Bobby Rush charges it was the raiding party, not the Panthers, who did the shooting.
Murder. The pigs murdered Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton while he lay in bed. I approve it. I approve it to the world that Fred Hampton was murdered by the pigs. Their lives, their argument to the people can't bear up to the evidence that we have that they murdered our Deputy Chairman in cold blood as he lay in his bed asleep.
Police displayed a cache of 14 revolvers and shotguns and about 1,000 rounds of ammunition, which they said had been taken from the apartment. Cook County State's Attorney Edward Hanrahan commended his men for bravery and restraint.
The immediate, violent, criminal reaction of the occupants in shooting at announced police officers emphasizes the extreme viciousness of the Black Panther Party. So does their refusal to cease firing at the police officers when urged to do so several times.
The National Council of Churches today elected a woman president for the first time in its history, setting off charges of racism. Dr. Cynthia Waddell, an advocate of female power in the church, was elected in Detroit by council delegates over the Reverend Albert Klieg, a black minister of the United Church of Christ. Dr. Klieg then attacked what he called the white racist establishment of the council, which represents 42 million Protestant and Orthodox Christians. Time is running out for you, he said. The black people are the basis for whatever hope there is for the future of the church.
And here's the Norelco Santa with some new ways to say Merry Christmas. Give the Norelco triple header with a cord or in a rechargeable model. Give the inexpensive Flip Top 20 or the new battery cordless. And say Merry Christmas to the ladies with a Lady Norelco, shaver or beauty salon. Norelco, even our name says Merry Christmas.
When you change channels on most color TV sets, the people may turn green or purple. But now, Magnavox has invented total automatic color. You set the color and forget it, and get perfectly tuned pictures in the right color automatically. Total automatic color makes Magnavox the best color TV you can own. Set it and forget it.
There'll be no nationwide railroad strike, apparently, after all. That strike, which had been threatened for months, was averted today in Washington when management and labor negotiators agreed on a new contract for some 48,000 members of 4 rail unions, boosting top pay to more than $4 an hour by August. Union spokesmen predict quick approval by the membership. A mild rally on the New York Stock Exchange today sent the averages up for the first time this week. Volume was 13,200,000 shares. The New York index gained 15 cents. The American Exchange Index was up 12 cents. The U.S. ambassador to Poland, Walter Stessel, attended a Yugoslav embassy reception in Warsaw last night. And during the pleasantries, he had a brief but significant chat with a diplomat from Communist China. The State Department confirms only that there was an informal encounter. But CBS News diplomatic correspondent Marvin Kalb has the details.
It was the first high-level Chinese-American conversation in almost 2 years. It went surprisingly well. And as a result, the State Department is now planning, before the end of this year, to propose a resumption of formal negotiations between the two countries and to announce a further liberalization of U.S. trade policy towards Peking. The administration has held up on both of these steps until it had some idea if the Chinese would respond favorably. The fact that the Chinese diplomat did not turn away when Ambassador Stessel approached him quite deliberately is regarded in the State Department as a significant hint that China is finally ready to do some business. There was another factor, too. Officials here realize how sensitive the Russians are to any sign of an improvement in Chinese-American relations. Therefore, no overtures to China were made until Washington was convinced that the Helsinki talks with Russia were going well. They are. In 2 weeks, an agenda for formal arms limitation talks will be announced, and then, with that behind both Washington and Moscow, the Nixon administration will make its long-delayed move towards opening the door to China. Marvin Kalb, CBS News, Washington.
President Nixon is enjoying great popular support, according to a CBS News survey. A telephone poll of 1,154 adults late last month showed 81% satisfied with Mr. Nixon's performance as president and only 18% dissatisfied. By region, the president gets his strongest approval in the South, 86%, followed in order by the Midwest, the East, and the West. But even in the region of least popularity, the West, 77%, more than 3 of every 4 adults, are satisfied. Vice President Agnew said today that there's a strong possibility that he will visit South Vietnam during his 10-nation Asian tour later this month. He also said that before he departs, he's going to make another major speech. And he said it will not be about the news media this time.
For 50 years now, we've been telling you that Bayer aspirin is the best pain reliever on Earth. Well, guess what? Now Bayer aspirin has been to the moon. Of all the pain relievers you see advertised, Bayer was the one selected to go with the astronauts on their historic moon mission. Think of that the next time you need a pain reliever. For headaches, muscular aches, fever of a cold or flu, Bayer works wonders.
Hi, I'm Marlene Francis, and I'd like to test your judgment. Which of these antacid tablets would you say is stronger? I mean, which do you think settles more of the acid that causes heartburn or indigestion? Well, once again, the biggest is not the best. The smaller Phillips tablet is concentrated, so it's stronger than either of the leading antacid tablets that come in a roll. There is no contest. Phillips tablets are stronger. You like them.
In Los Angeles today, a prosecutor said he will seek an indictment charging conspiracy to commit murder against the leader of a roving band of hippies in the killing of Sharon Tate and others. Charles Manson will be charged along with at least 5 others, according to Deputy District Attorney Aaron Stovitz. The only charge against Manson so far is possession of stolen cars. One member of his group reportedly has said that Manson was not present when Miss Tate and 4 acquaintances were slain last August. As the words cyclamate and monosodium glutamate have entered the American consciousness, if not the lingo, so has concern over the quality of our food. Its critics charge that the horn of plenty, which feeds most of us, hits sour notes when chemicals are added to the food supply. Murray Thompson looked into what food authorities are looking into at Iowa City, Iowa.
Remember the day when you could taste food fresh off the farm? Well, nowadays, it's safe to assume that almost anything you eat has been around a while, because it takes time to ship, to store, and preserve it. So a staggering amount of it is camouflaged to make it look fresher, seem tastier, and smell better. Everything from the meat and potatoes we eat to the corn that comes out of these fields in Iowa. It's right on the labels for you to see, although hardly anyone reads labels anymore, on boxes of cornflakes like this, which contain the chemical additive BHT, to make the cereal seem flakier and even fresher.
Frozen corn packaged in butter sauce that is artificially colored. Sweet whole kernel corn flavored with sodium glutamates and vitamin C added. Canned cream corn with cornstarch added to ensure smoothness. The list is endless. The texture, flavor, and odor of foods have been enhanced by what are commonly described as additives, of which there are about 3,000 in use today, an increase of 50% in the past 10 years. Each man, woman, and child in the United States now consumes about 3 pounds of additives annually. Not all of these chemicals are dangerous. But the problem of additives is perhaps best illustrated by their use in baby foods, many of which contain salt, sugar, and monosodium glutamates. They are intended not to satisfy the infant, but the mother. An experiment at the University of Iowa showed that infants were indifferent. They ate as much unsalted as salted food offered to them. Dr. S.J. Foman, pediatric nutritionist at the university, thinks there may be some danger in feeding babies with heavily salted foods.
The feeding of salt in rather large amounts to the infant may predispose to development of high blood pressure. This has been shown to be true in infant rats, and we don't know whether or not it might be true in the human infant.
We use products that are classified as additives, just as sugar and salt are, but the major reason for using ingredients in this classification is to make a better product, a product that will be eaten and consumed by the baby.
Are you more interested in enticing the baby or the mother?
Well, we feel that you really can't separate the baby and the mother, that this is a unit, and that you feed a product or you offer a product to the mother who in turn feeds it.
At the University of Iowa, pigs are being used in preliminary tests to study the effects of various additives before being tested on human babies. The immediate goal is to begin experiments that might throw light on the whole problem of monosodium glutamates, MSG. What bothers some scientists is the overall effect of all the food additives we consume, combined with the pollutants in the air we breathe and the water we drink. Geneticist Dr. Samuel Epstein.
The first point to accept is that in many cases where the hazards exist, we have alternative chemicals that don't produce these hazards. And the overwhelming majority of chemicals do not produce these hazards. The next point is there is a growing realization amongst workers in the field, particularly in the field of carcinogenesis, that the majority of human cancers are due to chemicals in the environment.
In the Soviet Union, there is a flat ban on the use of additives unless they are proven absolutely necessary and safe. In this country, however, the philosophy seems to have been anything goes into the food unless proven harmful. In 1958 and 1960, 2 amendments to the Food and Drug Act were introduced, establishing for the first time regulations governing the content and distribution of all food additives. But the regulations left uncovered a large number of additives manufactured prior to the establishment of the new standards. The reason was that they had been generally regarded as safe until the controversy over cyclamates and MSG arose this fall. Now demands are being heard in Congress for creation of a new agency, independent of the Food and Drug Administration, to police the use of all chemicals added to food. Murray Fromson, CBS News, Iowa City, Iowa.
The Federal Trade Commission announced today that it will investigate the effect on health of household detergents containing enzymes. The Commission noted reports that some plant workers have suffered skin ailments and flu-like and asthmatic conditions after being exposed to high enzyme concentrations. The FTC emphasized that household products contain a much lower concentration of enzymes. Its concern is over their prolonged use.
Pat Hernan here at the Union Carbide Laboratories, where the big news in antifreeze is the new anti-leak formula for Prestone. Scientists have developed the one anti-leak formula good enough for Prestone, America's #1 brand. You can get the new anti-leak formula in the famous can or this new plastic handy jug. Now science makes Prestone protection better than ever. Get Prestone antifreeze with the new anti-leak formula.
No women allowed. Well, I saved you my lunch. Well, okay. Come on up, sis. How long have you been saving it?
Man from Glad, siblings in a stalemate.
Cool it, kids. Try Glad sandwich bags with a fold lock top. Fold this flap in, this flap over. Locks in the fresh, locks out the stale.
Fresh like you.
Try Glad sandwich bags with a fold lock top. From Union Carbide.
Now to Washington and Eric Severide for some observations on the two dominant Western alliances which have been meeting in Europe this week. Eric?
The overriding foreign policy question for the American government remains in Asia, safe extrication from Vietnam. But this is the season when the two great international innovations of the Western world re-examine their institutional selves, the Atlantic Alliance and the European Common Market. And so the Secretary of State and much of our best economic and military brains are concentrating on Europe right now. The era of post-war Europe is all over. Something new is evolving, its outlines not very clear. Its developing relationship with the United States equally uncertain. Even the most pro-American European leaders have been ambivalent toward this country. When we have taken a strong lead there, we've been accused of domination. When we've waited upon them to make up their own minds, we've been accused of a leadership failure. And another set of double notes is being sounded now. Various Europeans who have been urging us to free our strength and attention from the Vietnam trap now worry that Americans will be so soured after Vietnam that they won't take a strong hand anywhere overseas. In the meantime, we are confronted by a modern Europe that is both a comfort and a worry to the United States. West Europe has become unprecedentedly prosperous, a powerful contrast to most of communist Europe. The six-nation common market is now the strongest driving force in world trade. It's no longer the United States. It will be even more powerful if Britain enters the market and adjusts to it. We have pushed for all this, believing in the vision of a European political union developing out of economic union, and therefore, hopefully, an end to Europe's terrible wars. We did not get political Europe and won't get it unless the new generation of European youth can somehow create a new and common allegiance. And the economic Europe we do have now has become a fierce and in various ways damaging competitor, particularly in agricultural commodities. In the beginning of all this, the fear of communism in West Europe was the driving force. That threat now seems remote. If it develops again, it will develop from within, not because of poverty or oppression, but because of public disorders. Anxiety about this is not exactly acute these days, and what anxiety exists is directed mostly toward Italy, where the national cohesion seems more and more fragile. It may not be accurate to say that anything can happen there, but a great deal can happen not to our liking. Walter?
That's the way it is. Thursday, December 4th, 1969. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.